My name's Steve Clark, CEO of Trust Systems. Today we're talking to Ollie Britt of Samsung about all things digital signage.
Hi guys, so Ollie Britt from Samsung Display. I've been 9 years in the AV industry, coming up to 3.5 years at Samsung. So I work on the display team at Samsung, focused on end user sales, end user business development. We're vertically aligned across the team, and my focus is retail end user. Thanks for having me on.
There's a few questions. The first one, Ollie, around digital signages. Where do you see the market for digital signage in the future?
Yeah, sure.
Very open-ended.
Yeah, broad question, but I think typically where we see it now, Steve. So I think some of the research that we've done for 2024, we see probably a lot of the sort of post-COVID story still. So retail sales, physical retail sales, kind of steady deceleration in sort of annual growth rates, but versus the e-commerce side of retail, which is, I guess, steadily growing, and we see that will probably surpass the overall the physical retail sales. So what does that mean for digital signage? To your question, real importance on omnichannel for retailers. How do they bridge the gap between the online sale and the physical retail? Why do people go to stores, and what's the reason for them to go in? And that's mainly, I think, across the board is really customer experience. That's still the main topic. Nothing new, something you guys know all about as well, but that's still the real driver at the moment.
It's very interesting you say that about omnichannel and online shopping versus in-store shopping, but market research is saying that 80% of purchases are still made in store at the moment. Is that something you guys are seeing in your research, or the customers you're talking to?
Yeah, I think definitely, but I think that a lot of those sales are done. A lot of research is done online, and there's a lot of data for retailers that have an online presence that bring people to store. I mean, typically that sort of sales journey, Steve, especially prevalent is in automotive retail, where customers typically do all the research online and then only go to store to make the purchase because of the type of product, right? That's really prevalent. And in those scenarios for automotive retail, as a consumer, you end up almost knowing more than the salesperson that's serving you. So you know more about the configuration, the trim, the color you want, and digital signage is a massive enabler for that market.
Do you think in terms of the research and the customers you're speaking to, do you think one of the big statistics that gets bandied around across the marketing and the press and around digital signage is it increases basket size and emotional purchases? Have you got any evidence of that where customers' basket sizes are increasing, or through emotional purchases, i.e. you go into a store, you've got a very specific list of things you want to buy, whether it be a grocer or a clothing store, but then you come out with something else because you've seen it on the screen and go, you know what, I'm going to buy that because I like the look of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of that sort of self-checkout journey, the research we do have is from about 5,000 retailers or customers that we surveyed, in that about around 40% of consumers are willing to pay more if their experience in store is seamless. So I guess that plays in slightly to your question around when you're at that journey, if the sales process is completely seamless, you're willing to pay more. If it's difficult, if you're not getting personalized suggestions or recommendations, you're likely just to go with what you came in to buy, right? Not what's being served to you.
And have you got any statistics from customers where they've bought Samsung technology, they're coming back and saying, you know what, it definitely drove that emotional purchase or basket size? Or is that still because we're still in the, as far as the industry is, do you think we're on the start of the journey here, or are we quite far down in terms of where retail in the UK is for digital signage?
Yeah, I mean, so statistics, I guess, would be, as I said, probably more so with our kiosk product or our touch signage for that increase in basket size. A lot of that's done in the application or the customer journey. So how do you serve the relevant kind of upsell at that point of purchase, to increase that basket size? I still think there's a lot more to be done, Steve, to be honest. About even simply just serving the right information to the right type of customer at the right time. So, are you the right type of consumer to to buy that product, or are the screens just a little bit noisy with everything rather than personalized content?
It's a good point, I think, Ollie, because what's the success story look like, and in your opinion, where have you seen digital signage deployed properly, and actually, you can say it delivered what was required in terms of whether it was basket size, emotional purchases, because basically people don't deploy digital signage just for the sake of it, right? It's obviously to sell more, So, what does a success story for you guys look like, or you've seen?
Sure, yeah. So I mean, stripping it back, regardless of the type of retailer that you're talking to, I think the success story starts by, ultimately, to your point, understanding the goals of the business. How does that digital signage help them kind of achieve that? Is that, again, to what you said there, Steve, sales enablement, or is it how do we affect the customer journey in store? Is it just a moving wallpaper? Is it just content control for the marketing team rather than actually physically serving an offer, etc.? So there's lots of ways to skin it, but I do think overall having a content strategy and understanding the business to positively impact the consumer in all of those scenarios is the sort of, I guess, the blueprint for success.
There's a lot of rhetoric around the immersive experience, right? The immersive experience, in terms of what does that mean? We all shop. I've got 5 sons. I spend half my time in sports shops, right? So, what does an immersive experience look like? We've got a new generation of buyer who is influenced by content, do you think?
I think so. I think they're used to. I think they're looking at the demographics and Gen Z and that growing trend in terms of population. How that generation is so tech savvy. The way that content's produced, you see agencies shortening content to almost be like what they see on social media. We know that from some of the stats that moving image has a 400% effectiveness versus print in a store environment, but the attention to detail and the opportunity to affect someone is something like inside 10 seconds or something as low as that. Whereas so that I guess that trend of short, sharp media to affect that buyer definitely is something that retailers are considering.
Here's a question for a digital signage manufacturer: is it the screen or is it the content?
Depends on the scenario, right? But I guess it's a good question. I guess, look, we Samsung, we provide the hardware platform, right? And the reseller like yourselves or the end user have the ability to build out onto that. So they go hand in hand, I guess. If you're looking at high-end retail where color replication is the utmost critical thing for them, our micro LED technology has incredible range of color accuracy, etc. You're looking at a product type there. But if you're looking at mainstream retail and you want something that's immersive, animated, maybe in synchronized with the tills or with the LED or the in-window signage, that's the software and the content, right? So I think, depends on. I sort of swerved that, but it sort of depends on the use case, I guess.
Astutely answered, Ollie. I would call that astutely answered.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
What's the common mistakes you think that customers are making, when they enter the world of digital signage or that journey? You start that journey.
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple of things. I think, again, for us as a hardware provider, looking with just hardware only, the wrong product in the right area of the wrong area of the store, right area of the store. Have you considered in window for foot traffic, standard signage, properly positioned? Is it legible? Video wall technology versus LED. So I think from a hardware perspective, getting the right product in the right area is key. But I think the main one that I still see massively is just from a content perspective, just having a long loop of content that's not relevant to the customer. So having 10, 20 items that are on a loop all day, no customization. How do we serve that consumer at that time? You're not always getting the same demographic of customer in the morning versus in the evening or at the weekends. And I think in a lot of instances, sort of the marketing team take over and say, we've got to have these 10 items all day, every day. and it's not necessarily relevant to the customer in store at that time.
So appropriate content delivered to the right demographic at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the future? You know, there's a lot of hype and talk now in the industry around, you know, particularly, you know, around the retail media piece, you know, which is effectively, you know, sponsors and paying to advertise on people's digital assets, right? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's still growing, isn't it? I think it exploded over in the US because look, the US understand monetizing and advertising. They were much more ahead of that than us, weren't they?
Yeah.
Typically, they over there they do quite a lot of what I'd say programmatic advertising through the agency, so automated advertising and selling those slots. But over here, we've seen obviously supermarkets take that quite quickly. So there's a lot of retail media across the supermarket space, but I think the proportion of programmatic is still very low for the UK, just because of the agency landscape. The way that we manage ads, the way that they sell the space is really kind of metered by those agencies. So I guess the opportunity for, you know, service providers or systems integrators like Trust is that manual management of content and that service delivery of how to serve those adverts in, you know, into the right spaces. Still, there's that programmatic piece I don't think will come in as quickly as it has in the UK. But yeah, to your point, Steve, I hope it lives up to the hype. Really, outside of supermarkets, is that going to take off into all areas of retail? Probably not all, but I still think there'll be wide adoption.
Do you think it's something that the customer should be considering as a driver for their digital signage? Is it the fundamental driver, do you believe, or is it a nice to have, or a cherry on top that you actually get some revenue from your digital asset or digital signage?
Yeah, I think it's again varied, but I'd say I do think it's kind of a cherry on top still. I don't think it's the sole purpose of digital signage. The customers still want the control of the content to a degree, whether those adverts be relevant to the store, you know, non-competitive, obviously, all of those kind of stuff. And we're seeing that big retailers are taking specialist, you know, headcount in to manage this retail media, whereas before it was maybe outsourced. So I would say mainly it's a cherry on top rather than that sole purpose typical digital out of home model where the partner goes to the retailer and says, you've got a great space, we want to monetize it. I think it's kind of coming the other way around, if that makes sense.
What's your thoughts on the role of AI in digital signage? And have you come across it anywhere?
Yeah, it's the hot topic, isn't it? AI. Everyone likes to talk about it at the moment, but I think we're still at the beginning of it for digital signage. There are some implementations of that, whether that be, you know, through, I think for retail in supermarkets or in retail through loss prevention, things like CCTV and AI machine learning of image detection to reduce loss prevention, blacklist people from stores if they've had previous, you know, for loss prevention. And I think obviously other use cases potentially being automating, you know, staff processes, customer service, you know, self-checkout eventually. I think that's crying out for some AI and reducing those sort of staff costs for retailers. But I still think the more simple one that we'll see really is adding to that personalization of content, understanding the shopping habits and ultimately making sure that the digital signage has the relevant advert content on for that type of buyer. If they've done all that research online, you know, and you come into store and they've used a mobile app, why not serve them a relevant offer based on their browsing history or previous buying? So I think that will come, and it's starting to come. And for us at Samsung, obviously we are starting to do more on the consumer side for AI. So you see with Galaxy AI and in TV that we're doing a lot more with, you know, AI translations and things. So for display specifically, we already.
I think people don't quite understand that AI is already here. right?
Yeah.
And even in the home space, where with if you are a consumer of Netflix or Amazon Prime Video, when you watch something, right, it serves you up the next batch of, because you've watched X, you should watch Y, right? So it's already here in some way, shape, or form, isn't it? Even to the context in the retail space and the customer service space, there are businesses out there producing, avatars, AI avatars, which is a person on a screen basically asking you questions around, how can I help you? So it's coming, and it's here in some space, but it's inevitable, as they say. Death in
Yeah, and it's
taxes,
just
inevitable.
exactly, and it's just how retailers utilize the data they already have, right? And I think in a lot of instances, they have good amounts of data, and it's just how they automate some of those actions. To your point, in the self checkout journey, you scan your loyalty card, and they know all of the previous purchases, your points level. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So all of that's coming, and in display, we've had AI in some of our products already for content upscaling, for 8K screens, etc. And in our latest batch of firmware, we've got our SmartThings Pro solution coming into display, which is our aggregation tool, if you like, which will be, I think, massively key for AI within the display range and digital signage.
Fantastic. How important do you think analytics is in terms of this digital signage journey? And do you think people use it enough?
Yeah, it's a critical measure of success. Obviously, for I guess the upfront investment. Typically, as you guys know, the upfront investment for a retailer is a lot for digital. With all of the hardware, the services on top. So, how does the end user say to the business, look, here's the ROI? How do we sell? If you're looking at retail media, it's critical for your third party advertisers as well. How do they measure proof of play through the CMS, and also the proof of display of the content, not just we've sent it and we hope it arrives. How do we actually confirm through the hardware on system on chip that it has been shown, and the iterations of how many times it's been shown? So yeah, it's critical for digital signage and the retail media part as well.
Yeah, what about, the very basic analytic of, we've advertised a specific product, has it driven sales? Because that links back to the retail media piece, doesn't it? If you are a major brand spending money to advertise in somebody's digital assets, right? And it's not cheap to do that. You need to understand that your ROI as a brand, you've driven more sales, right? Because that's fundamentally why you're advertising. You want to drive more sales through. Do you see people capturing that data and linking up digital signage playlists and the time it played back to the receipts at the till?
Probably not enough, to be honest, Steve. We've got a big hospitality customer who does that. They have a big retail media network here in the UK, and they've got those brands that are being sold through the till, so they are able to through those campaigns serve the product campaign through the signage, and then tie that to that data to say to them, look, you've spent X here on the signage, and we're seeing a 5-10% uplift on your sales overall, and they've made that back. So they're doing that in-house, but I think there's a massive opportunity in supermarkets specifically for that, or retailers that have multi-brands that are fighting for that space. Still a manual task at the moment, but the capabilities absolutely are there to do it.
What's the if you're giving advice to a retailer in terms of one thing, the one common mistake that people you see made time after time, what would that one piece of advice be?
I'd probably say that point we mentioned earlier around the relevant content. All the platforms that are out there and the signage have the ability to schedule content down to even basic half an hour slots. Content items. I think too often you see the same piece of content rolling on the screen every 2 or 3 minutes. It's not relevant to the customer, and it just becomes noise in the environment. So content strategy, I think, is the main common mistake.
Agreed. I think content strategy is everything. Yeah. What you're playing, when you're playing it, and who you're playing it to, right?
Absolutely. And that ties into AI eventually, right? We could probably get there and automate some of that process, but all of the CMSs that are out there have a really full level of control, and with the right partner delivering it, you shouldn't be seeing the same piece of content over and over again.
Last question, Ollie. What is the one key major benefit of digital signage that you would say is the thing that retailers or a customer should be focused on? The one benefit of a digital signage infrastructure.
Yeah, I still see, for me, it's still the reason why digital signage was invented. So that move from print media, posters, Fomex hung on walls that go out of date within 3 months, and then the whole kind of workflow and process around the installation and maintenance of that. Still, over time, digital signage is a better investment for that. Typically, just from looking at LFD, it lasts typically 50,000 hours. You have the full control. It can be turned on and off, etc. So, up front, it's big, a bigger investment. But over time, with the right content, like we've said, digital signage is a massive enabler. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that, Ollie.
Pleasure.
Ollie,
thanks, guys.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it, mate. Appreciate you taking the time out, and we'll speak soon. Thank you for joining us, Ollie, today, and all of your insights into digital signage. Stay tuned for episode 3.